Emily, welcome to the Scenic podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited because when we first was planning up this conversation, I was like, oh, I mean, I'm a graphic designer, so I dabbled in art, let's say
Yeah.
it, and I had art history in school, but all of that didn't come to mind. What first came to mind was a book by Seth Godin that he wrote a couple of years ago. It's called The Icarus Deception.
Uh-huh.
And he talks about art basically, and making art, and it's quite interesting. And he on the very first page, he asks the question why you make art, and he kind of says, well, because you must. It's
Yeah.
it's just this dry because you must, and then art is what it is to be human.
Yeah. I
So
love
I'm
that.
like, okay, are we all artists? What is your
Yeah.
take on this?
Yeah. I do think we're all artists. I think that yeah, I think we're all artists. I mean, when you think back when you're a kid and you are just your sensitivity is high and you're like connected. I don't know about you, but I feel like everybody that I've talked to is like, yeah, there's this weird sense of connection with the things around you, and you have a little bit less, you're less inhibited to just throw something together. Yeah, I do think everybody is an artist. And I think that I mean, as you get older, you just get stuck into, but what are people going to like and what can I make
Oh,
money with?
so we train ourselves out of being artists
Of
and
course. Yeah,
becoming conformists.
totally. Yep. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Whenever
this is,
I talk
yeah.
to young people about artists,
Yeah,
and
even when I
I
see what my
don't care.
kid, what he puts together, and it's like, yeah, sure, I would never think of that, but hey, you do
Uh-huh.
you. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's sort of something to it that you're born. So then the artists, the ones who practice their art, even when they're grown up, what what can people who aren't pursuing their art in whatever form that is, what can we learn from them?
Yeah. Well, I think you're right in that artists are like compelled to make something. And I feel like that has to do something with like being willing to follow a thread of truth that they feel or that they're interested in, and without knowing what the answer is going to be, or without knowing where it's going to go in the end, just be willing to like kind of pull that thread and keep following it until it
Mm.
unfolds and reveals itself. So, gosh, what everybody can learn from artists, is that what you asked?
Hmm.
Yeah, I think one of the, this is funny because even artists don't notice this particular thing, but I think everybody can learn it. It happens in anything. Anytime you're creating something from
Hmm.
nothing, right? So a job, a relationship, whatever, art, there's like this emotional roller coaster where it's like, I'm inspired, I'm ready, I'm going to do it. And then there's just like this joy of acting on
Hmm.
it and digging in. And then there might be like a part where the doing of it becomes really tedious. And then you get stuck and you're like, oh shit, now I'm stuck. And then you like start judging yourself or start judging your
Oh,
circumstances. And you're like,
yes, yes.
this is
All the
messed up.
nasty little things
I've
play in your
ruined it.
head.
Yes. And then and then you get depressed, right? You're kind of down on yourself. And then so artists that realize this happen usually like take a break, right? Or get some
Hmm.
distance, and they go do something, or they just surrender, right? They're just like, okay, the thing that I expected is not reality. Like this isn't happening how I thought it was going to. And um and then they leave it for a little while and become open, or just totally so exhausted from being mad at themselves about it that they're just surrendered a little bit. And then something like comes in, right? Like you read a poem, you listen to a podcast,
Mm,
and you're like,
mm.
oh, okay, I know how I can continue with this. And then you do something else and it becomes something else. And then you at some point you just decide it's complete. And you're like, okay, I didn't know that's where we were going to go, but here we are. And you can move on with your next cycle, right? So
Mm.
I think what people can learn is like, and artists need to learn as well, so they can be aware of when they're in it. But like the creative process is not just those times where you're inspired and you're doing and then it's finished. It's the whole trajectory, right? It's the
Yeah,
up and the
it's
down
not
and the
just
back.
the oh my God, this is so exciting, fresh
Yeah.
part that we all know from projects, relationships, whatever. But when it kind of like gets tough or shit hit the fan, and it's kind of like what your true colors will show, and we kind of like show, okay, what are you made of?
Right. Or not. And like maybe it's not even what you're made of, just like what will come to you, like what will come through you when you're open to what's next. Or when you give up
Oh,
trying to
yeah, I
make this
see.
other thing into what you thought it was going to be.
I see. So I'd say from listening to you, what we can learn from artists is living with the uncertainty.
Yeah,
Because you start something, there is no blueprint, there is no template. You just start from scratch.
totally.
The
And
fear
I
of the
think
blank
like,
canvas.
it's and like the feeling that it's always working. Like this part is supposed to be here. This is the part that is working as well. I just don't like this part as much. There's a way through this.
So also then a very solid level of self-trust.
Yeah. 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 And not self-trust as a like, I always know the answers, but I know that if I sit here long enough and am open and look for and sensitive to all the things
Mm-hmm.
that could come through, then
Mm-hmm.
I know that something's going to happen and this will go somewhere.
Mm. That's really, yeah. I mean, that's totally like a way of life and a way to see things.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting what you also said that you're very invested with artists are very invested with what they're doing.
Yeah.
To I mean, border obsession. But you said there's a point, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, where you kind of have to let it go, where you have to detach when you're
Yeah.
stuck, especially when you're stuck, that you just have to like, okay, I I know, but I'm not seeing the way or the next step it's gotta take. So I have to step back
Yeah.
and like detach from it, even though it's my art, and see what will what will happen. Will the
Yeah.
art become something? I mean, art is deeply personal, I
Totally.
think. Is there a point where the art becomes like like its own persona?
Totally. Yeah. I think so. And I think like different artists will have different,
Mm.
um,
Oh god, I mean,
tolerances
different
for how
artists have
far.
different techniques and whatever. Like, I mean,
Right.
that's the game.
Yeah. I think so. And I think detaching is one where I think some people will like be in line with the idea of just holding it more gently and rather than pushing it away, but just holding it in a different way.
Mm. How can we don't want to say non-artists, but how can people who are not really trained in holding it differently, how can that look like? Because I feel this is
Mm,
such a good way of all aspects of life or business. Whenever you feel, oh, I need to push through, I need to push
yeah.
through with my kid, in parenting my kid, I need to push through with my business, blah, 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 blah. How, how can we hold something more gently? What are the things or the shifts or the practical tools that you recommend?
Let's see. I think that when we're thinking about holding something gently, a, it's, you're holding something, you're like, okay, I thought, that things were going to go this a certain way, and they're not right now.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I was wrong about a lot of things in this situation. Maybe a lot of the places that I thought we were going to go with this, it wasn't where we were ever going to go. And so I think like in terms of holding something more gently, you can start to detangle what was
Mm.
important about that. So
Why you started in the first place?
right, why you started in the first place, what this kind of reminds me of like just like claiming your desire or what's important to you in the first place or what your values
Mm.
are. I think some people they're not as solid in what those are. And
Mm.
so part of the holding something gently is being able to step back and look at what's really important to you. But some people don't know what those are yet.
Mm.
And I think that this reminds me of um, a therapist I used to have where he would ask me a bunch of questions and my first response was like, well, I don't know, this is what I wanted and it's not happening. And I kept saying, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, I don't know, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And he would just not say anything and just wait for me to keep talking, and then I would always say the part that I knew after that, right? And so he's like, Emily, you can just like pause and then say what you do know about it and it
Mm-hmm.
will be true. And I think when we're holding something onto something so tight, we want to believe we want to believe that where we wanted to go was right. And
Oh, so we don't see it as whatever wasteful time or disappointment or
yeah, yeah. And I think that we can just kind of yeah, just detangle and see what's around it. I feel like in terms of like finding values and seeing what's really important to you, you can, I think women especially are like still stuck with like what should be happening or like what things should look
mm,
like.
hmm
And instead of giving themselves that pause and being like, okay, like what is true here? What's
hmm
true for me here?
Do you have a favorite way, or how did you for yourself work out what are my true values? Or
Yeah,
like what are my values? What is my North Star? Whatever you want to call it.
I think that something actually recently happened where I had like a coach friend over and we were just talking about business and where we wanted to take business stuff. And she was looking at my house and she was like, Emily, do you think that maybe you want to be an artist? And I was just like, oh, I was like, oh shit. And I was like, that like hit me so deep and it was like clear and um just very like solid and deep. And I was like, oh shit, I think I do. Like, why have I
Mhm.
never seen this before? And I think for me, like those types of knowing things happen when it is like clear and then something that feels very deep in the body, as opposed to
Mhm.
something that is very like up in my head and
Mhm.
urgent and has to happen
Mhm.
now. And I think like when you were talking about holding something tightly, like that feels up in the head too, and that feels very urgent. And oh, I needed to
Yes.
like make this
Yes.
happen. Where like
Agreed.
the true things almost don't even have a timeline associated with them, right? You're like, oh shoot, I do think I want to develop an art practice for myself. And here I've been doing all this other stuff and helping artists, which I love to do and will continue to do. But now I'm like, oh, well, this is really inconvenient now that I have to follow my own truth somehow and try to like,
Take your own medicine. Interesting.
yes, totally. Oh, how annoying.
No, but it brings us to a very good topic because, as you said, like we both believe everyone's kind of like born an artist, that it kind of like gets trained out of ourselves.
Yeah.
The way in we see the world is like gets into right or wrong boxes.
Yeah.
And I sometimes when I talk to my clients about hobbies, I get like blank stares.
Yes.
And then
Isn't
they're
that
like, I like to read. And I'm like, that's good for you. Like, yeah, I mean, reading is a great hobby. Um, but is there also something you like you make? Is there anything you create?
yeah.
Um, and then they're like, no. And often people are like, oh, I would like to do something,
Uh-huh.
but it almost feels overwhelming to start, which
Yeah.
brings me to you, where you shared, oh, I want to start establishing and cultivating my art practice.
Yeah.
How can we go about this? How can we
Oh,
start?
yeah. I can tell you how I'm starting, and
Yes, please.
it is totally a dose of my own medicine. It's funny because like I feel like,
Karma,
you know, I've seen
bitch.
I've seen I mean people, my artists are well beyond. I mean, they are doing, selling big works and doing big installations and so and they're having problems like coming to a boardroom table and feeling solid in their own values when they go in and try to negotiate prices or even bring up
Hmm.
prices. But and so I'm like, oh, I got that. Like I can help you with that. But they're well ahead of me in
But what
just
they have figured
developing.
out, or you are figuring out now?
Yes, exactly.
Oh.
So
Hmm.
for me, I have one of those situations where it's like I have a young family and I have my coaching business and there is like realistically a very small pocket of time that I can start developing something. But if I don't use that, then we'll never get anywhere. So it's making it important to right now take those scraps of time and make
Hmm.
them into something that's useful. So right now it's like, honestly, it's probably like 8 hours a month. I can make something for myself or
That's a
try
full
something.
day.
Totally. Yeah. It's a full day or two, two big chunks, which is good. And and for me it's just like, okay, I'm doing painting and I'm doing ceramics and
Hmm.
and I don't have the skills yet to in ceramics to even be able to do something in my head. So it's like
Hmm.
I want just to try to make this shape. I'm gonna just
Hmm.
like figure out a way where I can get something that looks smooth in the shape that I want. And right now for painting it's just like I want to find a way to work with colors that doesn't make me gross out of myself. Like I'm just trying to find what I like. And so yeah, it's actually funny, like you mentioned, like what are your hobbies? And right now I'm in the position where I'm like, what do I like? Like what I know what kind of art that I like in other people, and I know what.
But that might not necessarily be the art you enjoy making.
No. And there's definitely a style that if I'm just drawing or painting, then I will like move into just naturally. And so it's really just trying to get the quantity up where some kind of pattern emerges. And then with the ceramics, it's just once I can get a shape that I like, then I can I have some ideas on like women's bodies and tree shapes merging into things. I'm like, I'd really love to be able to make something that at least like hints at what I have
Or
in my head.
explore this, or just explores this idea.
Yeah. So it's totally exploration. It's funny you brought up Seth Godin because there's another book that I love. I think it's even older and it's like a super thin book, but it is, oh my gosh. I think it's like something like what are you going to do when it's your time and it's always your time or something like that. But it's
Oh,
a
which sounds like very much like a Seth Godin title,
yeah,
which is
totally.
brilliant. But yeah.
Yeah, and pretty much the whole book is how to be an amateur. Like a throbbing amateur at something, and having the reader realize that like before you're a master at anything, you're going to feel very stupid at something, and you just have to keep feeling stupid at something until you have a level of capability.
Yes, which is also probably gets harder the older we get, because we don't like to feel stupid, because at one point in our lives we detached very bad memories with that.
Oh yeah.
And also, yeah, it's just nothing to be in our society. It's nothing to be. It's not nothing to be desired. To be an amateur, to I don't know,
Yes.
to be new at something. Everyone wants like, even when you look at job ads, job descriptions, people would have like a 20-year-old with 10-year experience in like 5 disciplines. Like,
Yeah.
it's not gonna happen.
Yeah. That's a really good point because I coach mainly women, and I was trying to think of like some similarities between somebody who's not an artist, what they might deal with, and then what an artist deals with. And there's a similar thing among women where they don't want to say that they know something for sure. Like they don't want to be like, I am an
Oh.
expert in this
Mm-hmm.
and I can figure this out. And similar to like, I don't want to say that I know something because I might not know it and then I'm going to look like a fool.
Yeah, I'm getting
And
called
so,
out. Or
yeah. But in those types of situations, like, well, there's always something you do know. And probably one of them is like, I'm the type of person where if I don't know, I'm going to know something and I'm going to know what questions to ask in order to find people to put
yeah,
something together to find a solution.
yes. And if you're listening and you're ever questioning whether you do know, please, like, believe me. If you're listening to these podcasts, you do know. Like,
You
you're
know,
smart enough, you know. Like, otherwise you would have been long gone.
totally.
And I know my people. They're like, they don't
Yeah.
know. Um, it's so, and it's really interesting, right? Because you said like you have to set time aside to figure out what you like.
Yeah.
And that just like brought me back to, my kid is now turning 5 this summer. And it really brought me back to like 2 years ago when he was like turning 3, and the chunks of time got slowly bigger.
Yeah.
Like, he would play 5 more minutes by himself, or just like it just this tiny stretches got bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And I had to really rediscover what I like,
Yeah.
because a lot of the things, like, I wouldn't say the values shifted per se, but there was less. I was less willing to compromise. I was
Yeah.
less willing to like take up with it just for the sake of whatever. And I'm like, man, I actually don't really like this, or I actually do like this.
Yes.
And yeah, I had to start really small, like you said, like in your case, taking out colors and just color, I don't know,
Yeah.
shapes, circles, strokes, and see what you
Yeah. I
like.
mean, literally whenever I start, I'm like, oh, I hate feeling like I'm starting from scratch. but, but it's the process. It's necessary.
Is this, yes, it's, we know it's necessary, we know it's the process, and still like we know we have to move through this discomfort. Like, what what is your like best kept secret on moving through discomfort when starting something new?
I just think of like designing your life, right? Like I think
Mm-hmm.
we get fed or served up like, this is what your life can look like when you have this kind of job and this kind of family structure, and these are your
Yeah.
options. And then you can go on vacations, and you can, you know, go to get a cocktail with your friends, and it's going to be great. And I think like just once you start traveling, and once you start looking at just all the different ways you can be a person or live a life, and all the different ways that something that like, you know, right in our culture right now, you need a retirement, and then that equals safety. Whereas in other cultures, you just need community, and that equals safety.
Yeah.
And you go to 90 in a community where there's literally no, you know, medical help. So you can just start thinking about, I don't know, what I think about is just like, I definitely don't want to get to the end of my life and regret not having tried. And I also don't want to start trying when I'm 80 and have time. Like
Yeah,
I
I
want
mean,
to
that
do
is
that.
granted that you make it to 80, which is
Right.
not, right? I
Right.
mean, not being pessimistic, but I mean, we just don't know. And if you save something up for whenever, I mean, and this is not just for age, right? If you, I don't know, say if you're good clothes for the good moments, or
Right.
if you say feeling good about yourself when you look a certain way.
Yeah. You're missing out.
Such a fucking waste, honey. Mm.
Yeah. And yeah, like if you're always going to have a challenge, and you're always going to have
Mm.
um hardship, like what kind of hardships would you like to choose? These are the ones where I'm like trying
Yeah.
to get somewhere and trying to make something out of my life. That sounds juicy.
Yes, it definitely sounds more intriguing than the immediate discomfort.
Right.
But again, we're told in a way that everything that is immediate, it has more urgency or more meaning, more is just more present in our minds than anything long
Yeah.
term. You
Totally.
you
And I
brought
think
up,
like you could
sorry.
tell by the difference, and like, is it up here coming from my head? Is it
Yes.
urgent? Do I need to do it now? Like those are clues on of like, oh, okay, like let me think about this. Is this, I don't need to do it this way. I don't have to do it in this amount of time. Like I have options. And I think like being satisfied with your life is just always making sure that you know what the options are, and that you're choosing the ones that you want to do.
Mm. You brought up an interesting point before that I want to explore a bit more. Safety,
Yeah.
right? What you said, okay, like we need to feel safe or some form of safety to move through this cycle of I have no idea what I'm doing, this entire roller coaster of creating art.
Yeah.
Um, oh, I think I once, that reminds me, I think I once read a quote. Oh, I have no idea by whom it is now, but it's kind of like the three necessary components to becoming an artist is seeing, making, and the tabula rasa, just like the whole ups and down roller coaster, whatever or not. But I mean, back to safety. My mind does this sometimes.
I get it. Me
Okay.
too.
So we need to feel a certain level of safety, which is deeply personal to each and every one of us, to be able to create freely,
Yeah.
I'd say, right? Because if you're under, I don't know, if you don't know how to pay your bills at the end of the month, it probably
Yeah.
feels especially hard to draw a colored circle and decide which one you like best.
Totally. Or decide that that's the best use of your time, is to draw the circles. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's financial safety, and like the facts, the cold hard facts of like, is there enough money or not?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's all of like the future anxiety of like, will there be enough money?
Mm-hmm.
Will not be. And then there's like the safety of like emotional safety, or like self-talk, right? Like
Mm.
if this doesn't work out, am I gonna be an asshole to myself? Or am I gonna make this be a giant failure if this doesn't work out? If I try this and I take a risk and it doesn't work out, am I gonna am I gonna make myself unsafe in doing that?
Mm.
So like with this, I mean, and there is a lot of financial risk for a lot of the artists I work with. What I end up doing, which is not an easy sell, but we do like look at their money, and
Mm-hmm.
we project what their life costs, which a lot of them haven't done this. And
Mm-hmm.
then we figure out what like the business they're trying to build, what that costs. And then we have a real look at like what they need to make.
Mm.
And that will usually change, like be like, oh my gosh, I have to like make in a totally different way if I'm gonna like be a person who can be supported by my art to cover all of this in a way that would make me feel safe. But in doing that process, they have outlined what financial safety means for them. And so while they're going about building your art, however long that, whatever timeline they want to put on that, then there is a a concrete thing that they can look at and be like, I feel unsafe. Well, am I unsafe? Like, oh no, I'm actually making progress towards this thing that I'm doing. Like, of course your brain is going to tell you any business thing is unsafe, anything, any risk is going to be unsafe. But you can then look back and be like, is that true? Am I unsafe right now? Or am I just spinning this out of control into a bunch of scenarios that may or may not happen?
So my brain is busy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, what do you think? Can there be like a point where an artist feels like too safe? You know, where it kind of like
Uh,
stifles their growth, or just like
Maybe, I haven't had too many artists bring that up, but I imagine if, you know what though? No, they get bored. I think they get bored with some things. And so I don't think I've found anybody that is in danger
I'm feeling too safe.
or feeling too safe. But I think artists will tend to put themselves on another level of risk because that's what they like to do. Like risk in terms of like pushing a new kind of project or exploring a new technique or medium or concept.
Yeah. So artists really don't like boredom.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
When I tend to get bored, my head has this nasty tendency to create drama, to like blow shit out of proportion, so I'm not feeling bored again.
See
So
how
maybe
creative you are?
I know, I should do something else with that.
What stories?
Like maybe I should get clay or something. I'll
Yeah.
write stories. That would even be more practical than just to get an entire pottery studio, which I don't have the space for. But I do like
Right.
a pottery wheel.
Yep.
It's yeah, it's really interesting how when we say art, yeah, like art to make art or to be an artist is human, and
Yeah.
how we've seen so many traits of like how we deal with uncertainty or detachment, surrender. How we have so many parallels of how we can hold ourselves as artists, or how we can see ourselves as artists, and
Yeah.
what we can learn from them.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I really see artists as like, and really, I mean, there are people who are not artists running businesses or doing things in their life who
Hmm.
think like artists, right? This isn't like you make art and therefore you're an artist. Like there
Hmm.
are artistic
It's a
everything.
way of being, or a
Right,
way.
right. But I think like in a lot of ways it's just people that are highly sensitive and see connections and see ways that things can be blended and merged and fused and taken apart and broken down and put back together again.
Hmm.
Um, and so like artists, I feel like are, here's like society all moving in a circle and doing things, and then artists are able to almost like document the feelings of humanity when they're happening and
Hmm.
put them in a form that people can understand. And
Hmm.
then yeah, I think it's a really important part of society where I would love to, in my vision is like there's this important role of documenting and expressing, and then money is given to these artists to buy their art, and then they put that money back into their creative process and being inspired um, and looking again and being able to take a new connection and make it visible for people. So it's kind of a connected thing.
No, but it's really beautiful. I love what you said. Like artists, like document how we collectively feel.
Yeah.
That's very beautifully put. So, if we want to train or cultivate the artistic side of us, I feel in order to like document, the prerequisite for documenting is seeing the world in a special kind of way.
Yeah.
How
Or
can we
feeling.
learn to see like an artist?
I think it's a feeling thing. I think
Mm,
and I think it's like a loop of like feeling something, putting something on it, making something visible with the least amount of judgment as possible, and then
mm-hmm.
observing and then changing it or not or doing it over again. So I think if you're going to become like an artist, then you can think about everything, you can kind of detangle, like
Mhm.
like I said, where if we're seeing what we can kind of merge with it or blend or take apart, then you can kind of look at anything and be like, what can we do with this?
Mhm.
What if we tried throwing this together and putting this together in a different way, and then just observing and on repeat forever.
I love this. And I think it's something that is truly needed. Not, I mean, in our society as a whole, because we've done things for a while now. And look at that turned out. It's
Yeah.
peachy for a lot of us.
Yeah.
And so we need to do things differently. I think this is, I mean, this is clear for everyone. Like, at least in my bubble. So we need to do things differently, and we need to look at the things and like detached from their previous meanings and see if is this useful, can this be useful, and how we can put
Yeah.
it back together in a way that serves us better.
And I think there's also like there's some of these key people that are really good at hearing what different people say and saying it in a different way, like helping it be articulated in a different way.
Like translators almost.
Yeah, translators. They're like
Mm-hmm.
translator people in the world who are like, if you have, so let's say you have just a normal organization,
Mm-hmm.
and you have an artist and they are a feeling type of person and they just kind of like blurt something out,
Mm-hmm.
or they have some kind of courage allows them to be like, hey, I'm noticing this happening and like I don't like it, or it feels weird, or I feel like we should do something different. And then a translator can be like, okay, let's like slow down and not just throw this onto the table is not important. Like, let's not dismiss this, but let's
Mm-hmm.
see what's
Mm-hmm.
here. If we like, let's hear more of what you're saying and see what we can do here. I'm thinking of like one example is I was interning when I was in my early 20s for the um it was called the Seattle Arts Commission when I was in it, but I was an intern, so I just was sitting there and the head of the company was like, what ideas could we have that make this city more of an art city? And I was just like, well, let's just like take all the government and put them on the moon, and then all the artists can run the government. And everybody's like, and she's like, okay, well, that's really interesting. What if there was more artists in like positions of authority and leadership? Like, what would that look like? And how would we train somebody to do that? And how would we find people that
Mm-hmm.
have that capacity or interest? And I was just like, whoa, that's
Mm-hmm.
cool. It's cool that that's what you made with that, where I was just blurting a feeling out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this brings me like this reminded me a lot of my agency days when I I mean I'm a trained designer, but I'm also a sociologist. So I was often that translator role of like
Yeah.
talking with the designers and then going over to the strategy people and be like, listen, we gotta work together on this thing.
Yeah.
Like designers are not feeling this. um
Yes.
and it really is a skill. And yeah, maybe every business should have like an on-call artist.
There you go.
That
And
would
the
be really
artist,
cool.
yeah. And the challenge with the artist is going to be like, I can't articulate why, but I know this strongly. And if we could just slow down for a second and look at this in a different way, then I think it will be better. And so just having the courage to be able to say that
Mm.
is a big leadership step
Oh
as
God,
an
yes,
artistic
yes.
person in a company. And
Yeah.
then yeah, having a team. I mean, the strategist, and then for the translator for the person that role that you were in, the hard part for them is once you go into the strategist, and if they have like more power in the company, and they'd be like, oh, that's a little bit unreasonable, then we'll like slow down the timeline and budget stuff and blah blah blah. And so we can't do that. Sorry. And so yeah, on kind of
No,
like
it
a
would
bigger,
need, yeah, yeah. I mean, it would need different levels of working together, different like no hierarchies for sure. But it's interesting, right? Like sometimes if you ever feel stuck with whatever you're doing, yeah, maybe take on the artist's gaze or artist approach and be like, okay, this is not working. Let's take everything apart.
Mhm.
Let's see which of these pieces I like or don't like. And
Yeah,
let's see if we can put them together in a new way that I like better, like
yeah,
same or better, and see what happens.
yeah. Like, oh, we were really focused on this. Like, what are we missing? What are we
Mm-hmm.
not looking at when, because we were so focused on this, which obviously is not working? What are we not seeing here?
Mm. Which, like, as you've said, this happens to every one of us. You didn't see that you're one of your values or desires is to become an artist. Like
Yeah.
sometimes the things are just so
Oh
close
yeah,
that we don't see
totally.
them.
And then it was so clear. It's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I've had my whole life. I have a sculpture degree and a landscape architecture degree. And I
I mean, that's
figured,
like, girl, come on. Like
I
it's
know. Well, I was like, oh, I'll do public art because I'm really uncomfortable having my own idea and like just because like I need a client to
yeah,
tell me what they, what they need, and I need a place to put
yes.
it in. And
I feel you. Yes.
yeah, and then, all of these companies, I have been a leader of a company where I hire other artists and I just pull them all together and we all make things together. And then during COVID, that was illegal to do events, and so we stopped doing that business. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll train artists because I know how to make a business or I know how to make a creative business, and I know how to train other people to do that. And so I'm like, okay, I'll be a coach. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been skirting around this forever.
But I mean, we're on a Scenic podcast. So I mean,
There you go.
welcome to the club. This is what we do. This is life. See, everyone listening, this is life. It happens to all of us that we detour but we're like, are you enjoying the journey,
I
Emily?
am. Yeah.
So see, that's what it's all about. Enjoying
Yeah.
enjoying the destination too, but most importantly, enjoying the journey. Because if the journey to the destination is shit, destination might be too. So
Also, I mean, the destination is going to change anyway, so it's always going to be a journey no matter what.
thank you very much. I could not have looked for a better way to end this podcast. Yes, absolutely. You're right, Emily. So before I let you go, where can people find you? Where can when people want to work with you, let me know where you're online.
Yeah, I think probably best place is Instagram is just emily.ellen.anderson. And that's my website too, emilyellenanderson.com.
Perfect. Okay. And you got a little something with us, the Art Dream Business Exploration Sheet. Do you want to tell me quickly something about it?
Oh, totally. That is just a series of questions. If people are like, what do I want to do? Like, what kind of life do I want to build? This is just a series of exploration questions where you can maybe get a little closer to figuring out what that is.
Oh, I'm all about explorative questions. One last question before I let you off the hook. What book are you currently reading, or what audiobook are you currently listening to?
Oh, dang. Good question. So I'm reading 2 books. I usually have 10, but right now I have 2.
That's good. Yeah, I'm usually also between 6 and 7, or like, but yeah, sure. 10. You do
I'm
you, Emily.
reading Hagitude by Sharon Blackie. Do you know this one?
No.
It was recommended to me just because I met with somebody from the event industry that I left during COVID. And just the idea of this like whole industry just going away, and this feeling of grief and unmooredness and like what's next and uncertainty, and has to do a lot with like perimenopause and menopause and what happens in the later part of your life. So it's called Hagitude. It's like totally steeped in old folklore and really good.
Ooh,
And then the other one I'm reading, it's good. Yeah.
that sounds
She's
interesting.
a poet too, so she's just lovely to listen to. And then the other one is called Otherlands by Thomas Halliday. And he's a paleontologist, and he describes extinct worlds, like past worlds. I mean, Earth world, like past versions of Earth that have gone extinct. And he writes about them as if you're in them and it's happening.
Oh,
It's very interesting. It makes you feel very impermanent. And then, if you want anything to like get you your desire in life, read that book, because you're like, oh my God, like we've been here like for a millisecond of time, and our life is very precious and short, and we just should be just doing whatever we want.
again, you're serving the perfect liners to end this conversation. Emily, thank you so much for being on the Scenic Route with me.
Thank you.